Vanish the apartment building mystery. Some buildings have a hunger that can never be satisfied. The Vista Hermosa apartment complex in Madrid has claimed at least 5 lives over the past 30 years, each disappearance more mysterious than the last. This is the story of its most recent victim. Miguel Hernandez rubbed his tired eyes as he glanced at his watch, 7:00 a.m. sharp. For nearly 5 years, he'd managed the 6-story Vista Hermosa apartment building without incident. But today would be different. The security company Aguila Seguridad had been causing problems for months, particularly with Roberto the guard with a serious drinking problem. Today, Roberto had failed to show up for his shift again, leaving Eduardo, who had already been on duty for 24 straight hours, exhausted and desperate to go home. "Go home and get some rest. I'll cover for you here," Miguel said to Eduardo, whose bloodshot eyes could barely stay open. "Thank you so much, Señor Hernandez." "I really couldn't keep going," Eduardo replied gratefully, gathering his belongings with sluggish movements. Miguel had planned to be in the building today anyway, supervising repairs to the elevator that had been malfunctioning for over a week. The residents, especially those on the upper floors, had grown increasingly irritable about climbing the stairs multiple times a day. "The repair crew should arrive around 9, Eduardo mentioned before leaving. "They need to check the machine room on the roof." Miguel nodded, settling into the small security desk in the lobby. Though not a security guard himself, he understood the importance of maintaining vigilance. Around him, security monitors displayed different areas of the building: the main entrance, the lobby, each floor's hallway, and the underground parking garage. At 9 o'clock, the repair team arrived, led by Señor Ramirez, an older man with over 30 years of experience in the field. Miguel escorted them to the roof, explaining the problems. Residents had reported strange noises and occasional sudden stops between floors. Throughout the morning, residents left for work, many grumbling about having to take the stairs. Those from the 6th floor seemed particularly annoyed, some even blaming Miguel, as if he had personally broken the elevator. "We're trying to get it fixed as quickly as possible," Miguel explained politely, though he had repeated this phrase at least a dozen times already. By 5 in the afternoon, heavy rain began to fall. The sound of raindrops hammering against the building's roof created a steady rhythm, but something about this particular storm made Miguel uneasy. Perhaps it was the atmospheric pressure or the distant thunder, but he felt an inexplicable disquiet. "We have to stop work because of the rain," Señor Ramirez announced when he came down to the lobby. "Water and machinery don't mix, and we don't want to risk electrocution." "We'll be back tomorrow." Miguel nodded, seeing them out. As he returned to the desk, he found a young woman standing in the lobby with a small dog wearing a bright yellow raincoat. It was Lucia from the 4th floor, who regularly walked her dog around this time each day. "Señor Hernandez," she called, her voice trembling slightly. "I just saw something strange on the 3rd floor. Miguel's attention immediately focused on her concerned expression. "What happened, Lucia?" "I was coming down from the 4th floor, and when I got to the 3rd floor hallway, the motion sensor lights weren't working properly. They kept flickering on and off," Lucia explained, nervously patting her trembling dog. "Then at the end of the hallway in front of the last apartment, I saw a woman." "Probably another resident," Miguel suggested, though he felt a chill run down his spine. "No, I know most people in this building. She was very young with long black hair and her skin was unnaturally pale. I've never seen anyone so white. She just stood there motionless as if waiting for something." Lucia shook her head. "Luna sensed something too. She started whining and refused to move forward." Miguel tried to maintain his composure. "Let me check the security cameras. There's a monitoring room in the basement." "You know about that already?" Lucia said, surprised. "I thought you—" "I'm not a security guard just filling in temporarily," Miguel explained. "I'm the building manager." Lucia nodded in understanding. "Well, check the cameras. I'll wait." Miguel led Lucia to the monitoring room. It took him a moment to figure out how to access the system. On the screen showing the third-floor hallway, he saw a figure standing in the darkness. Due to the camera angle and poor lighting, only the feet were visible, but there was clearly someone there. "See," Lucia whispered. "That's her." Miguel felt his mouth go dry. "I'll go up and check." "You shouldn't go alone," Lucia warned, her eyes wide with concern. "I'm the manager. It's my responsibility," Miguel asserted, though he didn't feel nearly as confident as he sounded. "Wait here." Miguel grabbed an LED flashlight from a drawer, checked the batteries, and headed up the stairs. Rain was still pouring outside, thunder now closer, and the stairwell lights flickered as he passed the second floor. His heart beat faster as he reached the third floor. When he opened the door to the hallway, the motion sensor lights didn't immediately activate as they should. Miguel stood still, waiting. After about 5 seconds, the lights came on, but then immediately shut off again. He turned on his flashlight, sweeping the beam down the dark corridor. "Hello," he called, his voice echoing off the bare walls. "Is anyone there?" No response. Miguel slowly moved forward, his flashlight scanning from left to right. The hallway was empty. When he reached the last apartment, 3C, he paused. This was where Lucia said she had seen the woman standing. Miguel checked the door to apartment 3C, securely locked, no signs of tampering. He pressed his ear against the door, listening, but heard only the rain and thunder outside. This apartment belonged to an elderly couple currently on vacation in Malaga who wouldn't return for at least 2 more weeks. With an eerie sensation crawling up his spine, Miguel checked the entire hallway, looking into every corner, even examining the emergency stairwell at the end of the corridor. There was no sign of anyone. The motion sensor lights continued to malfunction, occasionally flickering without any apparent cause. "Maybe the rain is affecting the electrical system," he muttered to himself, trying to find a rational explanation. But deep down he felt something wasn't right. When he returned to the monitoring room, Lucia was still waiting, anxiety written across her face. "There's no one there," Miguel reported. "I checked the entire hallway." "But we clearly saw someone on the camera," Lucia insisted. "She was there. Maybe it was a trick of light and shadow." Miguel tried to explain, though he didn't entirely believe his own explanation. "Or perhaps someone went up or down, using the back stairs before I arrived." Lucia didn't seem convinced, but nodded reluctantly. "Well, I need to go anyway. Luna needs to go outside quickly and get back before the rain gets heavier." "Be careful," Miguel said as he saw her out. After Lucia had left, Miguel tried to forget the strange incident. He returned to his temporary security duties, periodically checking the security monitors and making entries in the log. The rain continued to fall, now heavier than before, and Miguel hoped it would stop before the evening rush when most residents would return home. Around 8 o'clock, when the rain showed no signs of letting up, the lobby door burst open. Miguel was surprised to see Señor Ramirez, the head of the repair crew, entering soaking wet and breathing heavily as if he had been running. "Señor Ramirez?" Miguel stood up, concerned. "Are you all right?" Señor Ramirez didn't immediately respond. He stood there, water dripping from his coat onto the floor, his eyes darting around the lobby in a strange way, as if searching for something. "I need to get to the roof," he finally said, his voice tense and urgent. "I forgot something important." "Now?" Miguel asked, looking out at the window where rain was still pouring down. "Can't it wait until morning? It's pouring out there." "I need to go up now," Señor Ramirez insisted, already heading toward the stairs. "I saw her. She's waiting. I have to go." "Her who?" Miguel asked, feeling the earlier unease return. "Señor Ramirez, who are you talking about?" But Señor Ramirez had already disappeared up the stairs, vanishing from sight. Miguel considered following him, but decided to remain at his post. After all, Señor Ramirez knew the building and his job well. Nearly an hour passed, and Miguel began to worry. Señor Ramirez still hadn't come back down. He repeatedly checked the security cameras but saw no sign of the elderly repairman coming down the stairs or appearing in any hallway. The rooftop had no cameras, so Miguel couldn't verify if he was still up there. When the clock struck 9, the lobby door opened again. This time, 2 younger men from the repair crew entered, also wet from the rain. "Señor Hernandez," one called upon seeing Miguel. "Is Señor Ramirez here?" "He came about an hour ago," Miguel replied, feeling his concern grow. "He said he needed to go to the rooftop to get something. He hasn't come down yet." The 2 men exchanged worried glances. "We've been looking for him," the other explained. "We were having dinner at a restaurant nearby when Señor Ramirez suddenly stood up saying he'd seen someone pass by the window. We didn't see anyone. It was raining heavily and barely anyone was walking outside. He asked if we saw her," the first man continued. "When we said no, he just walked out. We thought he'd come back, but after 15 minutes we started to worry. We called his phone, but he didn't answer." Miguel felt a cold chill run down his spine. Her, the woman Lucia had seen, the one that Señor Ramirez also seemed to have seen. "We should check the rooftop," Miguel decided. "He might have had a problem up there." The 3 men quickly headed up the stairs. As they passed the 3rd floor, Miguel couldn't help but notice that the motion sensor lights were still functioning erratically, flickering unpredictably. He felt the hair on his arms stand up as they passed the hallway where Lucia had seen the mysterious woman. When they reached the rooftop, they opened the door to a vast space drenched with rainwater. The elevator machine room was in one corner and the crew's equipment was still there, covered with a waterproof tarp. "Señor Ramirez," Miguel called, his voice drowned out by the rain and thunder. "Are you here?" No answer. The 3 men split up to search the entire rooftop, checking the machine room behind ventilation ducts and anywhere else a person might take shelter. There was no sign of Señor Ramirez. "Maybe he came down and we missed him," one of the workers suggested, though he didn't sound very confident in his own theory. "We'll check every floor," Miguel decided, "and if we don't find him, we'll have to call the police." They began a methodical search, working their way down from the top floor, checking each hallway, emergency stairwell, and even the elevator shaft to ensure Señor Ramirez hadn't had an accident. When the search yielded no results, Miguel called the police. The police arrived quickly, led by Inspector Morales, a serious man with sharp eyes that missed no detail. He listened to the statements from Miguel and the 2 workers, taking careful notes. "So Señor Ramirez said he saw a woman?" Inspector Morales asked, his expression thoughtful. "He didn't specify," Miguel replied. "He just said, 'I saw her, she's waiting.' And this morning, a resident reported seeing a strange woman on the 3rd floor." The inspector continued, looking down at his notes. Miguel nodded, uncertain whether he should mention the peculiar detail about the woman's unnaturally pale skin. "Yes, but when I went to check, there was nobody there." "We need to review the security footage," Inspector Morales decided. In the monitoring room, they reviewed the recordings. The cameras clearly showed Señor Ramirez entering the building at 8:01 p.m., having a brief conversation with Miguel, then heading up the stairs. The stairwell cameras tracked him going up the floors and finally opening the door to the rooftop at 8:07 p.m. "And these are all the cameras available?" Inspector Morales asked. "Yes," Miguel confirmed. "There are no cameras on the rooftop." A larger search team was deployed, including police dogs. They checked every nook and cranny of the building, even the surrounding area, in case Señor Ramirez had somehow left the building without being recorded by the cameras. As the night deepened, the search continued without results. There was no trace of Señor Ramirez. No signs of struggle blood or anything to indicate violence had occurred. Simply nothing. "This doesn't make sense," a young officer muttered as the group gathered in the lobby. "How can a person vanish from a monitored building?" Miguel had no answer, but he couldn't stop thinking about the pale woman Lucia had seen, and Señor Ramirez's mysterious words, "She's waiting." 3 days later, there was still no sign of Señor Ramirez. An extensive search had been conducted, including checking the drainage system, technical spaces, and even breaking through walls in some areas of the building to ensure there were no hidden spaces. Nothing. Señor Ramirez had seemingly evaporated from existence. Miguel couldn't stop obsessing about the incident. He had taken time off to assist with the investigation, providing information and support when needed. But no clues emerged. One evening, as Miguel was reviewing the security footage for the umpteenth time, he noticed a detail he had previously missed. On the footage from the third-floor hallway, just before Señor Ramirez arrived at the building, there was a moment when the lights flickered and a shadow moved quickly across the frame. Too fast to see clearly, but it appeared to be a human figure. Miguel called Inspector Morales, who arrived within an hour to view the footage. "Could be something," the inspector admitted, "but it could also just be a light effect from the flickering lights. We'll send the footage to experts for analysis." As the inspector prepared to leave, Miguel asked, "Inspector, do you believe in unexplainable things?" Inspector Morales looked at him intently. "I believe in evidence, Señor Hernandez, and currently the evidence shows that Señor Ramirez entered this building and never left. Not through the front door, not through the back door, not through any window or emergency exit. That's either impossible or—" "Or what?" Miguel asked when the inspector paused. "Or we're missing something," the inspector concluded. The next day, Miguel had an appointment with Señor Ramirez's wife, Señora Elena Ramirez, a dignified woman with silver hair and sad eyes. She had requested to meet him to learn more about what had happened on the night her husband vanished. They met at a small cafe near the building. Miguel recounted every detail he could remember, but carefully avoided mentioning the mysterious pale woman or Señor Ramirez's strange behavior, not wanting to add to her pain. But after Miguel finished, Señora Ramirez looked at him knowingly. "There was a woman, wasn't there, Señor Hernandez? A woman my husband mentioned?" Miguel was surprised, but nodded. "Did he say, 'She's waiting'?" she continued, her voice trembling. "Yes," Miguel whispered. "How did you know?" Señora Ramirez closed her eyes for a moment, then opened her purse and took out an old photograph. "This is my husband when he was young, about 30 years ago, and this is his sister Isabel." Miguel looked at the photo. Beside a younger version of Señor Ramirez was a beautiful young woman with long black hair and a radiant smile. "Isabel died in an elevator accident in 1,992 inches, Señora Ramirez said softly. "She was an elevator engineer like her brother. They often worked together. There was an incident. A cable snapped. She fell from the 12th floor. Miguel felt a chill. "And where did this accident happen?" "Right here in your building, Señor Hernandez. The Vista Hermosa building. It's been renamed since then, but it's the same building." She looked into her coffee cup. "After Isabel died, my husband would sometimes say that he felt she was still there in the buildings where he worked, especially when he repaired elevators." Miguel felt numb. Do you believe—" "I don't know what to believe, Señor Hernandez," she replied. "But I know that before she died, Isabel had very pale skin. She suffered from severe anemia. And I know that for many years my husband has been waiting to see her again." That night, returning to his apartment, Miguel couldn't sleep. He thought about Isabel Ramirez, about the pale woman Lucia had seen, and about Señor Ramirez's mysterious disappearance. A week later, the official investigation was suspended due to lack of evidence. Señor Ramirez was listed as missing, but there was no explanation for where he had gone or how he could have left the building undetected. A new security company was hired, a new building manager appointed. Miguel requested a transfer to a different building within the company, never wanting to set foot in Vista Hermosa again. Years passed, and the story of Señor Ramirez's disappearance became an urban legend, a ghost story told by new residents. But Miguel knew the truth, or at least part of it. On a cold winter evening, as he was working late in his new office, Miguel's phone rang. It was Lucia, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. "Miguel," she said, her voice shaking. "I think I just saw her, the woman from the Vista Hermosa building." But this time she wasn't alone. Who was she with, Miguel asked, though he already knew the answer. "An older man," Lucia replied. "And Miguel, they're looking at you." Miguel spun around, looking toward his office's dark window. The hallway lights flickered, and in the moment between darkness and light he saw them standing there. A young woman with long black hair and skin as white as paper. And beside her, Señor Ramirez, smiling at him with a serene expression Miguel had never seen on the man's face when he was alive. And they were beckoning to him, inviting him to join them. Miguel felt his feet begin to move forward as if pulled into a sleepwalking state. He knew that if he didn't resist, he would be the next to vanish without a trace. But a part of him wondered, would that really be so terrible? The legend of La Dama del Ascensor, the Lady of the Elevator, exists throughout Europe and Latin America. Stories of spirits trapped at the site of their death, waiting to claim others, particularly those connected to the manner of their passing. In Madrid alone, 3 similar disappearances have been reported in the last decade, all involving elevator technicians who entered buildings and were never seen again. Have you ever experienced something strange in an elevator or an old building? Some say that if you find yourself alone in an elevator and it stops between floors, you might catch a glimpse of a pale woman with long black hair reflected in the metal doors. If you do whatever you do, don't turn around. Don't answer if she calls your name, and never ever follow her when she beckons. Because some buildings have a hunger that can never be satisfied, and the Vista Hermosa is still waiting for its next victim. The last customer pandemic apparition, COVID-19, wasn't the only thing spreading during the 2020 pandemic. In a quiet neighborhood of Madrid, an ancient phenomenon returned, targeting the elderly and isolated when they were at their most vulnerable. Ana Martinez pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her living room window, watching the deserted street below. 2 months into lockdown, her once bustling neighborhood had transformed into a ghost town. The few pedestrians brave enough to venture outside hurried along with masked faces, eyes downcast, maintaining their distance as if the very air around them was on fire. Directly across from Ana's apartment stood Don Manuel's small grocery store, its faded sign barely visible in the late afternoon light. Don Manuel Fuentes was well into his 70s, a kind-eyed widower who had lost his wife Carmen a decade earlier. In all the years Ana had lived in the neighborhood, she'd never heard mention of any children or relatives. The elderly man seemed utterly alone in the world, with only his modest store to give him purpose. Another delivery truck passed by without stopping. Ana's 14-year-old sister Sophia observed from her spot on the couch. "That's the 3rd one this week." Ana sighed. Before the pandemic, Don Manuel's store had always been a neighborhood hub. Not the busiest place, certainly, but it had a steady stream of loyal customers, mostly elderly residents who appreciated how Don Manuel remembered their preferences and always had time for conversation. Now the store stood eerily empty most days. "People are scared," Ana replied, watching as Don Manuel meticulously wiped down his counter for the 5th time that hour. "They think the bigger chain stores are safer." "That's stupid," Sophia said with the blunt certainty of a teenager. "Don Manuel sanitizes everything constantly. I've seen him spray the door handle after each customer." "I know, but fear doesn't follow logic." Ana's family was among the few who still patronized the small grocery, partly out of convenience but mostly out of concern for the old man. Ana could see products gathering dust on the shelves, some beginning to expire. She wondered how Don Manuel was making ends meet with his main source of income all but vanished. Their support for the local store came to an abrupt halt when Ana's mother woke up one Tuesday morning with a high fever and difficulty breathing. The COVID test came back positive. Within days, Ana Sofia and their father tested positive as well, though fortunately they remained asymptomatic. They immediately isolated, completely terrified of spreading the virus further. A friend of their father, Carlos, helped by bringing food and medicine to their doorstep. He would place the bags down and step several meters back. Only after he'd left would they open the door to retrieve the items. It was their sole connection to the outside world. With nowhere to go and nothing to do, Anna and Sophia began spending most of their time in the living room by the large window overlooking the street. They competed for the best seat, the one with the clearest view of Don Manuel's store. Not that there was much to see, hardly anyone passed by, but any sign of life outside had become precious entertainment. "I genuinely miss going out," Sophia sighed on their 4th day of isolation. "Even school." "You miss school," Anna teased, knowing her sister had always hated early morning classes. "Not school itself," Sophia rolled her eyes. "Just people, laughter, everything." Anna nodded, understanding the feeling perfectly. At 19, she had just started university when the pandemic hit, turning her first year into a series of mind-numbing Zoom lectures. Not exactly the best years of your life, everyone had promised. It was during one such dreary afternoon with gray clouds hanging heavy in the sky that they noticed something strange at the grocery store across the street. A new figure, someone they hadn't seen before. "Anna, look." Sophia pointed, her nose pressed against the window. "There's someone in the store with Don Manuel." Anna shifted closer to the window, squinting across the empty street. Indeed, there was someone standing inside. At first, she could only make out a blurry silhouette standing deep within the store near the back door that led to Don Manuel's small apartment. But as the lights inside brightened against the darkening sky, they could see more clearly a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with long black hair and skin that was peculiar. "Do you think she's sick?" Sophia whispered, as if the girl might hear them from across the street. "She looks so white, like a ghost." Anna couldn't disagree. The girl's skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent under the fluorescent lights of the grocery store, and most notably she wore no mask, which at that point in the pandemic, when everyone was terrified of contagion, was extremely unusual. "Maybe she's a relative's daughter," Anna guessed. "Or perhaps a helper." Sophia shook her head. "We've known Don Manuel for over 10 years. He's never mentioned any relatives, and he definitely can't afford to hire help." The strange thing was the girl didn't seem to be doing anything. She just stood there motionless, staring straight ahead. Not helping arrange merchandise, not cleaning, not chatting with Don Manuel, just standing there. "Something's off," Anna murmured. "Maybe she's his girlfriend," Sophia giggled. Anna rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. He's old enough to be her grandfather." "Then why is she there?" Sophia asked, chin resting on her knees. "And why haven't we seen her before?" Those were questions Anna had no answers for. Over the next few days, they began to notice a pattern. The young woman only appeared in the late afternoon, usually around the time Don Manuel was preparing to close the store. She always wore the same outfit, a simple white dress that fell to her knees and a thin gray cardigan. And she always stood in the same position near the back door as if guarding the entrance to Don Manuel's apartment. "She only shows up when it starts getting dark," Sophia observed on the 3rd day since they'd first spotted the girl. "Like a vampire." "Don't say that," Anna chided, though she had to admit there was something very strange about the girl. Another odd thing was that they never saw her arrive or leave. She seemed to simply appear. "Do you think she lives with Don Manuel?" Sophia asked one afternoon as they watched the pale girl in the shadows staring out the grocery store window, seemingly toward their apartment, though Anna wasn't sure she could see them through the distance and darkness. "Maybe," Anna replied, though that didn't explain why they'd only started seeing her recently. "Or perhaps she's come to help him during the pandemic." "Then why doesn't she wear a mask?" Sophia asked, raising the most obvious anomaly. "Don Manuel is so careful about COVID. He even wears a mask when he's alone in the store." Anna had no answer to that question. Their mother's condition gradually improved, and after 2 weeks the doctor said they could end their isolation if everyone tested negative. They all did, bringing enormous relief, though they remained very cautious about going outside. On their first day post-isolation, Ana decided to buy a few things from Don Manuel's store, partly to support him, partly out of curiosity to learn more about the mysterious woman they'd been observing for over 2 weeks. "Want to come with me?" Ana asked Sophia. "No," she shook her head. "I'll stay and watch from the window. That way I can see if she comes from somewhere." Ana nodded, understanding her sister's logic. They'd become amateur detectives, too invested in this small mystery to give up now. Donning her N95 mask and gloves, Ana crossed the empty street to the grocery store. The bell jingled when she entered, the sound echoing in the sparse space. Don Manuel was standing behind the counter, his tired face lighting up when he saw her. "Ana," he greeted, his voice slightly muffled by his mask. "It's been so long since I've seen you. Is your family all right?" "We had COVID," Ana explained, maintaining a safe distance. "But we're better now. All tested negative." "My God," Don Manuel said softly, making the sign of the cross. "Thank the Lord you've recovered." Ana nodded, glancing around the store. There was no sign of the mysterious girl. "Are you doing okay? Are you alone?" "Of course," he replied, frowning behind his glasses. "This old man is always alone." Ana swallowed, feeling goosebumps rise on her arms. "No one. Helping you in the store, I thought I saw someone." "Someone?" Don Manuel looked at her curiously. "No one comes to a little shop like this during the pandemic. The big chain stores have taken all my customers." Ana felt her mouth go dry. "I thought I saw a young woman here with you." Black hair, very pale skin. Don Manuel stood silently for a moment, then slowly turned to look toward the back door that led to his apartment. There was nobody there, but the way he looked with evident unease on his face sent a shiver down Ana's spine. "There's no one here with me, Ana," he finally said, his voice very quiet. "I'm alone. Always alone." Then, as if to prove a point, he suddenly erupted into a fit of harsh, dry coughing. It clearly came from deep in his chest. He quickly covered his mouth with a tissue. "Are you okay?" Ana asked worriedly, instinctively stepping back. "Just a dry throat," he said, after the coughing subsided, though Ana could see a drop of sweat rolling down his temple. "I think I caught a cold. I'll close the store early today to rest." "You should get tested for COVID," Ana suggested, feeling genuinely concerned for the old man. "I could help you make an appointment." "I'll be fine," he shook his head. "Just need some rest." Ana quickly purchased a few necessities, paid, and wished Don Manuel a speedy recovery. As she was about to leave, she suddenly felt compelled to ask, "Don Manuel, do you believe in ghosts?" He stared at her, his old eyes wide behind the thick glasses. He didn't answer her question. Instead he said, "You should go home, Ana, and perhaps you shouldn't come back here for a few days until I'm feeling better." When Ana returned home, Sophia was waiting eagerly. "She doesn't come from anywhere," her sister exclaimed the moment Ana walked in. "I watched the store entrance the whole time, and no one went in, but I just saw her in there about 5 minutes ago." "That's the strangest thing," Ana said, recounting her conversation with Don Manuel. "He said he was alone. When I mentioned the girl, he looked scared. Like he'd seen a ghost," Sophia said, eyes wide. "Don't be silly," Ana chided, though she herself had asked Don Manuel about ghosts. That night after dinner, they noticed that Don Manuel had lowered the roller blind, covering the grocery store window, something he rarely did. The blind had small holes enough for someone to look out from inside, and vice versa if the lights inside were brighter than outside. "Look," Sophia pointed as they sat at their usual observation spot. "She's still there." Ana squinted across the dark street and light rain. Indeed, through the small holes in the blind she could make out a figure standing near the window. A tall, slender figure, clearly not Don Manuel. and it seemed, though it might have been her imagination, that the figure was looking directly at them. "She knows we're watching," Sophia whispered, clutching Anna's arm. "Don't be ridiculous," Anna repeated, though she felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm evening. "She can't see us from that distance in the dark." But as she said it, she wondered if the girl wasn't looking at them. Why was she standing so still by the window like that? The next morning they woke to find the grocery store hadn't opened at its usual time, 7:00 a.m. By 9:00, the blinds were still down with no sign of Don Manuel. "Maybe he's resting because he's sick," Anna's mother suggested when Anna expressed her concern. "He's never closed the store," Anna said. "Even when he had a cold, he still opened." By the afternoon, when there was still no activity from the grocery store, Anna decided to call Don Manuel. The phone rang, but no one answered. "You should call emergency services," Anna's father said when she reported no response. "If he's really sick, he might need help." Anna called 112, the emergency service, and explained the situation. They promised to send someone to check. About an hour later, an ambulance parked in front of the grocery store, followed by a police car. They watched from the window as medical personnel and police broke into the grocery store. They disappeared inside for a while, then reappeared. One of the medics shook his head to his colleague. Not long after, a black bag was brought out, a body bag. Anna's heart sank. Don Manuel, the kind neighbor, was gone. The police came knocking on their door soon after. A young female officer with blonde hair tied neatly back and compassionate blue eyes stood at the door wearing a mask and maintaining a safe distance. "Good evening," she greeted. "I'm Lieutenant Vargas. I understand you were the ones who called with concerns about Senor Fuentes?" "Yes." Anna nodded, feeling her throat constrict. Has he passed away?" Lieutenant Vargas nodded sadly. "I'm very sorry. It appears he died from COVID-19 complications. Based on the condition of the body, the medical examiner estimates he had been deceased for approximately 24 hours. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. 24 hours ago. But they had seen someone in the store last night. Was he alone? Anna asked, her voice trembling. Lieutenant Vargas frowned. "Yes, he was alone. Why do you ask?" Anna glanced at her parents, then back at the police officer. "It's just, we saw someone else in the store with him. A young woman." "When?" Lieutenant Vargas asked, taking out a small notebook. "Almost every evening for the past 2 weeks," Anna replied, "including last night." Lieutenant Vargas stared at Anna, then glanced at her parents. "We found no evidence of anyone else in the store or apartment. No signs of disturbance, no signs of a second person." "But we saw her," Sophia interjected, stepping up beside Anna. "She was very young with long black hair and pale white skin. Like a ghost." Lieutenant Vargas smiled slightly at Sophia, the kind of smile adults often give children when they say something odd. It might have been a light effect through the window. Or perhaps a reflection of a passerby on the glass. "It wasn't," Anna insisted. "We saw her multiple times, always in the same position. I even asked Don Manuel about her yesterday." "And what did he say?" the lieutenant asked, her tone now more serious. "He said he was alone," Anna admitted. "But he seemed frightened when I mentioned the girl." Lieutenant Vargas noted a few things in her book. "I see. But I must emphasize that we found no evidence of anyone else's presence. No strange fingerprints, no personal belongings, nothing." "Then who was she?" Sophia asked a simple question with no answer. Lieutenant Vargas looked at Sophia with gentle eyes. "Sometimes, especially in stressful times like this pandemic, our minds can play tricks on us. We see things that aren't really there." "We didn't imagine her," Anna insisted. "I'm not saying you did," the lieutenant explained. "Just that sometimes we misinterpret what we see. Shadows, reflections, objects in the store arranged in a certain way. There are many rational explanations." But Anna knew what she had seen. And she knew that Lieutenant Vargas, with all her training to look for rational explanations, would never entertain the possibility that Anna's mind was moving toward. After the police left, Anna and Sophia continued to watch the grocery store from their window. The lights were off the door, sealed with police tape. There was no sign of the mysterious girl. "Do you think she'll come back?" Sophia asked, as they sat in the darkness staring across the street. "I don't think so," Anna replied softly. I think she came for Don Manuel." Sophia turned to look at her, eyes wide. "Like a death angel?" Anna shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe a spirit that comes to guide another spirit, like an escort." "But he seemed afraid of her," Sophia remembered. "Maybe he was afraid of what she represented," Anna said gently. "Not of her herself." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. "Anna," Sophia suddenly said, her voice quivering, "if she takes spirits away, and we saw her, could she come back for us?" Anna felt a chill run down her spine, but tried to hide her fear for her sister's sake. "No, sweetheart. I think she only comes for those who are ready to go." "How do you know?" Sophia whispered. The truth was she didn't. Nobody did. The next day, news of Don Manuel's death spread throughout the neighborhood. People talked about what a kind man he had been, how he had struggled during the pandemic trying to keep his small grocery store open despite dwindling customers. But no one mentioned the mysterious woman. No one else seemed to have seen her. A week later, the grocery store was cleaned out. There was no funeral due to pandemic restrictions, just a small cremation with very few attendees. Anna heard that Don Manuel's ashes would be placed next to his wife's in a small church in his hometown outside Madrid. A few days later, when Anna and Sophia went out for exercise, one of the few activities permitted during lockdown, they stopped in front of the empty grocery store. "Do you think someone will reopen this place?" Sophia asked, looking through the dirty window into the vacant space inside. "Probably not," Anna replied. "Not in these times." As they stood there, an elderly woman passed by pulling a small shopping cart. She stopped when she saw them. "You knew Don Manuel, didn't you?" she asked, her voice raspy through her mask. They nodded. "Such a shame," she said, shaking her head. "He was a good man. I've been shopping here since he opened more than 20 years ago." "Did you know anything about him?" Anna asked, curious. "About his past?" The woman looked at her intently. "He and Carmen, his wife, came from a small village near Madrid. They never had children. Carmen died of cancer over 10 years ago." "Anyone else in his family?" Anna pressed. The woman thought for a moment. "I think he once mentioned a Grandice, but she died when she was very young, a real tragedy. I believe that's why they moved here, too many sad memories in their hometown." Anna's heart beat faster. "Do you know what the Grandice was like, or how she died?" The woman shook her head. "Manuel rarely spoke of it. But I remember once when watching a movie on TV in the store, a ghost movie, he became very upset and turned it off. He said that Marisol, his Grandice, was terrified of the dark, that she always needed a light on to sleep." "Marisol," Anna repeated, feeling the unfamiliar name on her tongue. "Yes," the woman nodded. "I think she had beautiful long black hair like Carmen. Manuel always said she was the spitting image of her." She paused, looking into the distance. "He also once said that she was very sickly, often ill. Anemia, I think." Sophia squeezed Anna's hand, and Anna knew her sister was thinking the same thing she was. "Thank you for sharing," Anna said to the elderly woman. "We're very sorry about Don Manuel." "Oh, don't worry." The woman smiled sadly. "I'm sure he's been reunited with his loved ones. That's the only consolation when you get old, knowing that those who have gone before are waiting on the other side." Nearly a year passed. The pandemic gradually subsided. Life began returning to normal. Don Manuel's grocery store remained vacant, though there were rumors it would soon be converted into a small cafe. Anna and Sophia no longer sat by the window regularly, largely because they had returned to school and had more to do. But they never forgot about the pale woman Marisol, as they had come to call her after the conversation with the elderly woman. Sometimes when the lights were out and only moonlight filtered through the window, they still discussed what they had seen. "I think she came to take her grandfather home," Sophia said on one such night, "so they could be together." Anna nodded. It was the best explanation they could come up with. That Marisol, whoever or whatever she was, had come to ensure Don Manuel didn't have to go alone. That he had a guide. On a warm Sunday morning in June, they noticed a group of workers starting to renovate the old grocery store. They removed the old sign, repainted the facade, brought in new fixtures. "It really is becoming a cafe," Anna's father remarked, as they watched from their window. A week later, the new cafe, Cafe Aurora, officially opened. It looked bright and modern, with small, charming tables outside and warm lighting inside. They decided to visit on the opening morning. As they entered, Anna couldn't help but glance toward the back door where Marisol used to stand. It was now decorated with a large painting of a sunrise golden-orange light spreading from the horizon. A young woman with a radiant smile greeted them. "Welcome to Cafe Aurora. What can I get for you?" They ordered drinks and sat at a table near the window looking out at the street that was gradually becoming as busy as it had been before the pandemic. "This place is lovely," Anna's mother commented, looking around. "A nice change." Anna nodded in agreement, though a part of her still missed the old grocery store with its stocked shelves and Don Manuel standing behind the counter with his warm smile. When the young woman brought their drinks, Anna noticed she wore a small necklace with a cross pendant. It looked very old, possibly a family heirloom. "The cafe is so charming," Anna said. "How long have you had it open?" "Just today," she smiled. "I'm the new owner. I bought this place a few months ago after the previous owner passed away." "Don Manuel." Anna nodded. "We knew him." "Oh, did you?" She looked at Anna with new interest. "I never met him." "I just worked with a real estate agent." "He was a good person," Anna said. "Very kind." She smiled. "I've heard that from many people in the neighborhood. That's why I decided to keep something from the old store." "Like what?" Sophia asked, curious. "Well, let me show you," she said, gesturing for them to follow. She led them to a small corner near the counter where a framed photograph hung. It showed Don Manuel and a beautiful dark-haired woman, presumably Carmen, standing in front of the grocery store on its opening day many years ago. They were smiling happily, hand in hand. "I found it in a box of old things in the back," the cafe owner explained. "I thought it should be displayed as a memorial." "That's a beautiful gesture," Anna said, touched by this simple but meaningful tribute. As they looked at the photograph, Anna noticed something strange. Standing slightly behind Don Manuel and Carmen, almost at the edge of the frame, was a young girl with long black hair and pale white skin. "Who's the girl in the photo?" Anna asked, pointing to the shadowy figure. The cafe owner frowned, leaning in to look closer. "I'm not sure. I didn't even notice there was a third person in the photo. Maybe a relative. The photo is quite old." Anna and Sophia exchanged glances. They didn't say anything, but they both knew it was Marisol. When they returned to their table, Anna felt a strange sensation in the air, as if someone was watching. She looked around the cafe but saw only other customers chatting and enjoying their drinks. "Is something wrong?" Anna's mother asked, noticing her expression. "No." Anna shook her head, trying to dismiss the odd feeling. "Everything's fine." As they prepared to leave, Anna cast one last glance toward the sunrise painting on the wall where Marisol used to stand. For a moment, perhaps just a trick of the light on her eyes, she thought she saw a slender figure standing there, pale as paper, waving goodbye. When they arrived home, Sophia pulled Anna aside away from their parents. "I saw her," her sister whispered, "in the cafe, standing by the painting." Anna nodded slowly. "So did I." "Why do you think she's still there?" Sophia asked. "Don Manuel is gone." Anna thought for a moment. Maybe she's not just there for Don Manuel. Maybe she's there for the place, for the memories. "Or to guard it," Sophia suggested. to make sure everything is okay with what used to be her family's home. Anna smiled at her sister. Maybe so. Maybe she just wants to make sure the new people treat the place well. Do you think we should tell the woman, the cafe owner? Sophia asked. Anna shook her head. No, some secrets should be kept. If Marisol wants to be known, she'll find a way. That night before going to bed, Anna took a moment to look out the window at the quiet street. Cafe Aurora was closed, the lights off. But for a moment she thought she saw a pale light moving behind the window, as if someone was walking around inside. Anna smiled and whispered, "Good night, Marisol. Watch over the place for us." As she turned away from the window, she didn't notice that the pale light had stopped, as if listening, and she didn't see it slowly turn toward her house, a slender figure with long black hair and skin as white as paper, smiling and nodding as if in response. She didn't see it cross the street, heading toward their house where her mother was coughing in the bedroom, a dry cough she had been trying to hide from them all day. The phenomenon of La Dama Pálida exists in many cultures, spirits that come before death. During COVID, countless nurses reported seeing similar figures. In Madrid, 3 separate households reported seeing a pale young woman in their homes before a family member succumbed to the virus. Have you or your family ever experienced anything similar? Share your story in the comments. Whispers in the night. The Guardian. In Spanish culture, there exists a belief that when someone with dementia begins speaking to people who aren't there, sometimes they're actually seeing the spirits of deceased loved ones. This is the true story of what happened when we ignored warnings from the other side. I lost my parents when I was very young. A tragic car accident took both of them on a rainy night, leaving a 7-year-old boy with grief too vast to comprehend. Just a few years later, my grandparents who had taken me in also passed away one after another from age and illness. By the time I turned 12, it seemed fate was determined to strip away every loved one in my life. But then there was Aunt Elisa. She wasn't actually my aunt in the literal sense. She was my mother's sister. But in my heart, Aunt Elisa was my mother. When there was no one else left, she came, wrapped me in her warm embrace, and whispered the words I needed to hear most. "Miguel, I will never leave you. We'll get through this together." And we did. Aunt Elisa abandoned her stable job in the city, sold her apartment, and moved into my grandparents' small house to care for me. She never married or had children of her own. And now, at 40, she dedicated her entire life to me. Each morning she prepared breakfast for me before heading to her job at the local tailor shop. Every evening she helped with my homework, listened to my school stories, and created a safe haven I thought I'd never have again. "I love you, Aunt Elisa," I would often say as she kissed my forehead before bed. "I love you too, my little Miguel," she would reply with that warm smile I adored. But then when I had just turned 20 and was in my first year at the local university, things began to change. At first it was just small things, Aunt Elisa forgetting her house keys, leaving the stove on, or repeating the same story several times in one evening. I didn't think much of it. She was 55, and I assumed it was just signs of aging. But then the calls started. The first call came when I was at school from our neighbor, Mrs. Carmela. "Miguel," she said, her voice concerned. "Your aunt is wandering the street in her nightgown. She seems very confused." I rushed home to find Aunt Elisa being led back into the house by Mrs. Carmela. She was wearing her old bathrobe, her hair disheveled, and her eyes that usually sparkled with warmth and wisdom, now filled with confusion and fear. "Miguel?" she asked when she saw me, as if unsure whether I was really there. "Yes, Aunt Elisa, it's me," I said, guiding her inside. "What were you doing out on the street?" "I was looking for Elena," she replied, her voice trembling. "I have to find her. She's waiting for me." Elena, my mother's name. My heart constricted. My mother had been gone for over 13 years. "Auntie," I said gently, leading her to her favorite armchair. "Mom, Elena is gone. You remember that, don't you?" Aunt Elisa stared at me, her eyes gradually becoming clearer. "Oh, Miguel, I'm sorry. Of course I remember. I don't know what happened to me. I had a strange dream, and when I woke up, I thought I had to find Elena. I hugged her, trying not to let her see the tears welling in my eyes. I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. After that incident, I took Aunt Elisa to the doctor. The diagnosis, early onset dementia, hit me like a punch to the gut. She was only in her mid-50s, too young to face this devastating illness. The doctor explained that in some cases the disease can appear early, especially when there are genetic factors. "She'll need constant care," Dr. Fernandez told me after Aunt Elisa left the room to undergo more tests. "Her condition will only worsen over time." "I'll take care of her," I responded without hesitation, just like she took care of me. And I did. I arranged my class schedule to be home more. I researched everything I could about the disease, how to cope with it, and how to make Aunt Elisa as comfortable as possible. But nothing prepared me for what would happen during the nights. It was about 2 months after the diagnosis when I woke up at 3 a.m. and heard Aunt Elisa talking. I thought she was on the phone, though. That would be strange at this hour. But as I listened, I realized she was speaking to someone she believed was in the room with her. "No, please," I heard her whisper, her voice filled with fear. "Don't take me away. I'm not ready. I need to stay with Miguel. The boy needs me." My heart pounded as I gently opened the door to her room. In the dim glow of the night light, I saw Aunt Elisa sitting upright in bed, talking to an empty corner of the room. "Aunt Elisa," I called softly. "Who are you talking to?" She turned to look at me, her eyes wide in the darkness. "She's here, Miguel. She wants to take me away." "Who?" I asked, feeling a chill creep up my spine despite the warm night. "The woman," she whispered. "The woman with the pale white skin and long black hair. She's standing right there." She pointed to the empty corner of the room. I looked where she was pointing, seeing nothing. "There's no one there, Aunt Elisa. You're just dreaming." "Not dreaming," she insisted. "I see her. She comes to me every night. Sometimes, when I wake up and don't see her, I'm even more afraid because I don't know where she is." I sat down beside her, drawing her into my arms. "There's no one here, Auntie." "Just you and me." Aunt Elisa leaned into me, trembling. "You don't understand, Miguel. I see her. She's real." I stayed with her until she fell back asleep, but her words echoed in my mind. I knew this was a common symptom of dementia, hallucinations, and delusions. But something about the way Aunt Elisa described this woman made me unable to sleep again that night. The next night, the same thing happened. And the night after that. Aunt Elisa would always wake in the middle of the night talking to an invisible woman, begging her not to take her away. I started missing classes due to lack of sleep, but I couldn't leave Aunt Elisa alone at night. "You should hire a nurse," Mrs. Carmela suggested. When I ran into her at the local grocery store, my eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. "There are good home care services." "I can't afford it," I admitted. "And Aunt Elisa deserves to be cared for by family, not strangers." Mrs. Carmela looked at me with sad eyes. "You're a good boy, Miguel, but sometimes we need help." I knew she was right, but I couldn't accept it. Aunt Elisa had given up everything for me. Now it was my turn to do the same for her. Aunt Elisa's condition continued to deteriorate. The conversations with the invisible woman became more frequent, not just at night, but during the day as well. I began to catch her whispering into empty corners of the house, sometimes angry, sometimes pleading, but always afraid. "Who is she, Aunt Elisa?" I asked one afternoon when I caught her talking to the air in the kitchen. "I don't know her name," she admitted, her voice small, as if afraid of being overheard. "But she keeps calling my name. She knows who I am." "What does she look like?" I asked, trying to understand more about my aunt's hallucination. "Very young, maybe your age," she replied, her eyes distant. "Long black hair, skin so white it's almost transparent. I can see the blue veins underneath her skin, and her eyes." Aunt Elisa shuddered. "Her eyes are too old for such a young face. as if she's lived very, very long. I made a mental note of this description, deciding to mention it to Dr. Fernandez at Aunt Elisa's next appointment. Perhaps there was some medication that could help reduce these hallucinations. But before we could make it to the next appointment, I discovered Aunt Elisa calling a name I had never heard her mention before. "Isabella," she whispered one evening as I was helping her prepare for bed. "Stop calling my name Isabella." "Who is Isabella, Auntie?" I asked, helping her pull up the covers. She looked at me with confused eyes. "I don't know. No, I do know. Isabella." She paused, trying to remember. Isabella was Carmen's daughter. I had never heard of Carmen or Isabella. "Do you have a cousin named Isabella?" Aunt Elisa shook her head now, looking completely confused. "Not a cousin. I don't know. I can't remember." She suddenly gripped my hand tightly. "But she knows me, Miguel, and she won't stop calling my name." I patted her hand, trying to reassure her that everything would be all right, though I was no longer certain of that myself. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, then quietly left the room, leaving her nightlight on, as she could no longer sleep in complete darkness. That night, I decided to learn more about our family. I pulled out the old photo albums and documents Aunt Elisa had kept in a box under her bed. I had never really cared much about family history. Losing so many loved ones had made looking back painful. But now I felt I needed to understand better. I found an old album with yellowed photos. In it I saw my mother when she was young, Aunt Elisa, and many other relatives I had never met. I flipped through the pages, trying to find any indication of Carmen or Isabella. On the last page I found a small photo that had been folded multiple times. When I carefully opened it, I saw a family standing in front of a small house, a man, a woman, and a young girl with long black hair. On the back was written, "Carmen Alberto and Isabella, 1975. My heart beat faster. So they were real. But who were they? And why had Aunt Elisa never mentioned them before I continued searching and discovered a bundle of letters tied neatly with a red ribbon? They were letters between my mother, Elena, and a woman named Carmen. From what I could gather, Carmen was a cousin of my mother and Aunt Elisa, living in a small village about 100 kilometers from our city. The last letter, dated more than 30 years ago, made me shiver. Carmen wrote that Isabella, her 17-year-old daughter, was gravely ill, a rare form of anemia that had made her weak and pale. The doctors had given up. Carmen begged my mother and Aunt Elisa to visit, saying Isabella didn't have much time left. There were no letters after that. I didn't know if my mother and Aunt Elisa ever went to visit or what had happened to Isabella. But in my heart I knew Isabella had not survived. And now, more than 30 years later, was Aunt Elisa seeing the image of her long-dead cousin in her dementia-induced hallucinations. I carefully put away the documents and decided to ask her about it the next day when her mind might be clearer. But as I returned to my room, I couldn't help feeling like a cold presence was following me. I suddenly realized that the house had become unusually cold despite it being a warm summer night outside. I slept fitfully, my dreams filled with images of a young woman with long black hair and pale white skin standing at the foot of my bed, calling my name in a voice I couldn't hear but somehow understood. Around 3 a.m., I was awakened by the sound of Aunt Elisa talking louder and more agitated than usual. I rushed to her room and found her sitting upright in bed, pointing to the corner of the room. "You cannot take me away!" she shouted. "I need to stay with Miguel." "Aunt Elisa," I said, running to her side. "Are you all right?" She didn't look at me, her eyes fixed on the corner of the room. "What do you want, Isabella? Why won't you leave me in peace?" I tried to get her attention. "Aunt Elisa, Isabella isn't here. It's just me." But she still wouldn't look at me. "I'm sorry, Isabella. We didn't make it in time, but it wasn't my fault. I wanted to go, but Elena wouldn't allow it. She said there was nothing we could do anymore." I sat on the bed trying to take her hand, but she pulled away. "Don't," she cried out. "Don't touch me. I know why you're here. You want to take me away just like you took Alberto away. But I'm not ready." "Aunt Elisa, please," I pleaded, feeling completely helpless. There's no one here. You're having hallucinations." She turned to me, and I was startled by her expression, no longer confused or frightened, but completely lucid. "You don't see her, do you?" she asked, her voice suddenly very calm. I shook my head. "No, Auntie, there's nobody there." She nodded slowly. "Because she hasn't come to take you away. She's come to take me away." "Nobody is taking you anywhere," I said, feeling tears begin to well up. "I won't let that happen." Aunt Elisa smiled sadly and caressed my cheek. "Miguel, my darling, there are some things even you cannot prevent." I hugged her tightly, not wanting to let go, as if somehow by holding her close enough I could keep her with me forever. Aunt Elisa patted my back softly, just like when I was a child frightened after a nightmare. "Do you know who Isabella is?" I asked after a while, still not releasing her from my embrace. "Of course I do," she said, her voice clearer than I'd heard it in weeks. "She was the daughter of Carmen, my and your mother's cousin. She died of anemia when she was just 17. Your mother and I didn't make it in time to say goodbye." She paused, as if trying to remember something. "Alberto was your Uncle Carmen's husband. He died of a heart attack 3 years before you were born." "Why have you never told me about them?" I asked. Aunt Elisa sighed. "There's been so much pain in our family, Miguel. I thought you had carried enough already. And Carmen and your mother had a falling out after Isabella's death. Your mother thought Carmen had relied too much on folk remedies instead of taking Isabella to the hospital sooner." I nodded, understanding that our family's past was more complicated than I had thought. "And now you think you're seeing Isabella?" "I don't think my love," she said, her eyes looking toward the corner of the room. "I know. She's been here for weeks now. At first I thought I was losing my mind, but then she started talking to me and I knew it was real. I didn't know what to say." I wanted to believe this was just a symptom of dementia, but there was something in the way Aunt Elisa spoke in her sudden clarity that made me unsure. "You should rest," I finally said. "I'll stay here with you." She nodded and lay down, but still held tightly to my hand. "She'll be back," she whispered, as her eyes began to close. "She always comes back." I sat beside her, listening to her breathing become regular as she drifted into sleep. The room remained strangely cold, and I couldn't help continuously glancing toward the corner of the room where Aunt Elisa had been staring. "There's nobody there," I told myself. "Nobody at all." But as I stared into the darkness, I could almost imagine a slender figure standing there looking back at me with ancient eyes in a young face. In the following days, Aunt Elisa's condition deteriorated rapidly. She began forgetting my name, sometimes calling me Alberto or simply the boy. She spent more time talking to Isabella, whom she now seemed to see not just at night, but during the day as well. I had to drop out of school completely to care for her. The doctors tried various medications, but nothing seemed to help. Aunt Elisa was gradually becoming detached from this world, as if she were living between two realities, our world and somewhere else, that only she and the invisible Isabella could see. One morning I woke up to find Aunt Elisa sitting at the kitchen table staring into a cup of cold tea. She looked more lucid than I had seen her in many weeks. "Good morning, Aunt Elisa," I said, careful not to startle her. She looked up and smiled a real smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. "Good morning, my dear Miguel." "You said my name," I said, unable to hide my surprise. "Of course," she chuckled lightly. "I would never forget you." I sat down across from her, feeling a ray of hope. Maybe the new medication was working. "How you feeling?" "Clear," she said, looking directly into my eyes. "Clearer than I've felt in a long time." "That's wonderful," I said, taking her hand. "I spoke with Isabella last night." She continued, her voice as calm as if she were discussing the weather. "She explained everything." I felt my hope fade. "Aunt Elisa." "No, Miguel." She interrupted me, her voice gentle but firm. "I know what you're thinking. You think I'm having hallucinations. And perhaps I have been about many things, but not about Isabella. She's real." I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to argue, but the rest of me realized that Aunt Elisa, despite her illness, was speaking more coherently and confidently than I had seen in many weeks. "What did she explain?" I finally asked. "Why she's here," she replied. "She's not a death angel, as I had thought. She's a guide. When it's time for a soul to leave this world, she comes to ensure they don't have to go alone." I felt my throat constrict. "And she's here for you?" Aunt Elisa nodded, still smiling gently. "My time is running out, Miguel. I've known it. I can feel my body weakening." "No," I protested, tears beginning to well up. "The doctor said your disease would progress slowly. You could live for many more years. Doctors don't always know everything," she said, her voice still calm. "I have an appointment with Destiny, Miguel, and Isabella will make sure I don't have to go alone." "You can't talk like that," I insisted, tears now streaming down my face. "I need you. I can't lose you." Aunt Elisa stood up, came around the table, and embraced me. She was still here, still warm and solid, but I could sense a new fragility in her body, as if she had become lighter, less tethered to this world. "You will never lose me," she whispered into my ear. "I will always be in your heart, just as your mother and father are always there. And someday we will meet again." I hugged her tightly, as if somehow I could keep her with me through sheer force of will. But deep in my heart I knew that Aunt Elisa was telling the truth. I could feel it. "Go back to school," she said when we finally parted. "Finish your semester. That's what your mother and father would want. That's what I want." "I can't leave you alone," I protested. "I won't be alone," she replied with a mysterious smile. "Isabella will be here with me." Against every instinct I had, I eventually agreed to return to school. Aunt Elisa seemed to be having a good day, a clear day, and I wanted to honor her wishes. Besides, I had an important exam that I couldn't miss if I wanted to pass the course. But as I prepared to leave, I felt an inexplicable fear grip my heart. "Do you promise you'll be here when I get back?" I asked, feeling like a child again. Aunt Elisa looked at me with eyes full of love. "I will always be with you, Miguel, one way or another." It wasn't the answer I wanted, but I knew it was all I would get. I kissed her cheek, hugged her once more, and left, turning back multiple times to see her standing at the door waving goodbye. I couldn't concentrate in class. My mind kept returning to the house, to Aunt Elisa, to the invisible Isabella that she insisted was waiting for her. I tried to focus on the exam, but I'm sure I got most of the answers wrong. As soon as possible, I rushed out of school and ran home, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, I noticed something was wrong. The house was too quiet. Normally at this time, Aunt Elisa would be listening to the radio in the kitchen. "Aunt Elisa," I called as I entered, trying to keep my voice calm despite my racing heart. No answer. I quickly checked through the house, looking in each room. "Aunt Elisa," I called, louder, fear growing with each passing moment. Finally, I found her in her bedroom. She was lying on the bed, eyes closed, hands placed neatly on her stomach. She looked so peaceful, as if she were just taking an afternoon nap. "Aunt Elisa," I whispered, approaching the bed. "Auntie, I'm home now." She didn't move. There was no rise and fall of her chest, no soft breathing. With a sense of horror rising within me, I touched her cheek. Her skin was cold. "No," I whispered, tears already flowing. "No, no, no." I knew the moment I touched her that she was gone. A check for a pulse at her neck confirmed it. Aunt Elisa, who had cared for me, loved me, who had become my mother in every important way, was no more. I collapsed beside the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know how long she'd been gone, perhaps right after I left, or maybe just minutes before I returned. But it didn't matter. She was gone, and I hadn't been there when it happened. When the last tears had finally dried up, I sat in silence beside the bed. The room was strangely cold, despite it being a hot summer day outside. And in that silence, I could have sworn I heard whispering, very soft, like the wind through a crack in the window. "She was not alone," the whisper seemed to say. "She did not have to go by herself." I raised my head, looking around the room. There was nobody there, of course. But in the corner of the room, the corner where Aunt Elisa used to stare, I felt a strange presence, as if the air there was thick or heavy with something unseen. "Isabella," I whispered, feeling foolish for talking to the air. "Were you there with her when it happened?" No answer, of course. But the air in the room seemed to warm a bit, and I felt an odd sense of peace spread through me. A feeling that in all my grief and pain I could almost interpret as an affirmation. I called the medical services and the police, the standard procedure for a death at home. They arrived quickly, examined Aunt Elisa's body, and asked me the standard questions. The doctor confirmed that she had died of natural causes, likely a stroke or heart attack not uncommon in dementia patients. As they carried Aunt Elisa's body out of the house on a covered stretcher, I stood in the doorway feeling like a part of me was being taken away too. But when I returned to the now empty house, I noticed something strange. On the kitchen table where Aunt Elisa and I had talked this morning was a small piece of paper with her handwriting shaky but still legible. "My dear Miguel, don't be afraid, I'm not alone. Isabella explained that I could choose my own departure, and I chose this one peaceful in sleep in the home I shared with you. I love you more than anything in this world. Remember that you are never alone. I, your mother, and your father are always with you. And remember that when it's your time to go, many, many years from now, we will be there to make sure you don't have to go alone. Forever loving you, Aunt Elisa." The funeral for Aunt Elisa took place on a drizzly day. Few people attended. She didn't have many friends or living family. Mostly neighbors, a few former co-workers from the tailor shop, and some of my teachers who came to express their condolences. I stood before the casket reading the eulogy I had written speaking of Aunt Elisa's unconditional love, her sacrifices, and how she had become the mother I had lost. I didn't mention Isabella or her hallucinations, but as I spoke, I couldn't help feeling as if someone was watching a presence that only I could sense. After the service, I returned to the house that was now painfully empty. I would continue living there. It was the only home I knew, and Aunt Elisa had left it to me along with her modest savings. But every room now echoed with memories and her absence. I sat in her favorite armchair, sipping some wine a neighbor had left. It was late into the night, and the rain outside had turned into a storm, with thunder occasionally rumbling across the sky. When a particularly loud bolt of lightning struck, the lights in the house flickered and went out, leaving me in complete darkness. "Perfect," I muttered, setting down the glass and standing up to find candles. I fumbled my way across the room, careful not to bump into furniture. As I passed through the hallway leading to Aunt Elisa's room, I heard a sound that froze the blood in my veins, whispering very soft as if someone was talking in a room. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" No answer, but the whispering continued. I couldn't make out the words, but something about the tone of it, urgent, insistent, made me shiver. With shaking hands, I pulled out my cell phone from my pocket and turned on the flashlight, shining it down the hallway. Nothing but darkness and empty walls. "This is just my imagination," I told myself. "I'm grieving and stressed. It's just the wind through a window crack." But as I approached the door to Aunt Elisa's room, the whispering became clearer, and with an icy shock I realized I could understand the words. "Miguel," the whisper called. "Miguel, you must listen." I stood frozen, the phone nearly dropping from my hand. It was a young woman's voice, one I'd never heard before. "Who's there?" I asked again, my voice breaking. "Miguel?" The voice came again, closer now, as if right beside me. "You are not safe. You must leave." I spun around, shining the flashlight into the empty space behind me. Nothing but darkness. "Who's speaking?" I asked, my voice louder now. "Please tell me what's happening." "No more time," the voice whispered now, seeming to come from all directions. Gas leak. You must get out, now." My heart pounded as I sniffed the air. And then I smelled it, a pungent odor like rotten eggs, the smell of gas. "Oh my God," I whispered suddenly, understanding the danger I was in. If there was a spark, even the smallest one, the entire house could explode. I dropped the wine glass and ran toward the front door, not bothering to grab a coat or shoes. Rain poured down as I rushed outside, but I didn't care. I ran to Mrs. Carmela's house across the street and pounded on the door. "Miguel?" Mrs. Carmela said when she opened the door, looking at me in confusion. "What's wrong?" "Gas leak," I gasped, breathless. "In my house. We need to call the fire department." Mrs. Carmela quickly let me in and called the fire department. I sat in her kitchen shaking, not just from being wet, but from shock. "How did you discover it?" Mrs. Carmela asked, handing me a towel and a hot cup of tea. I stopped. How could I explain that an invisible voice, possibly Isabella, the long-dead cousin of Aunt Elisa, had warned me? "I smelled it when the power went out." Mrs. Carmela nodded, apparently accepting that explanation. "Lucky you noticed it. Gas leaks can be very dangerous." "Yes," I murmured, thinking of the whisper. "Very lucky." The fire department arrived quickly and confirmed that indeed there was a serious gas leak in my house. They explained that the pipes were very old and might have been damaged in the storm. If I had stayed in the house another hour, or if there had been any spark, I might not be here to tell the story. "You were very fortunate," the fire chief told me after they had handled the situation. "If you had been asleep when the gas accumulated, you might never have woken up." I nodded, grateful but still bewildered by what had happened. I couldn't stop thinking about that voice, the voice that had saved my life. Mrs. Carmela invited me to stay the night, and I gratefully accepted. My house wouldn't be safe until it was fully repaired, and I wasn't sure I could return there alone after what had happened. That night, lying on the fold-out bed in Mrs. Carmela's living room, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper again, "Miguel, you must leave." Who had spoken those words? Was it really Isabella, the pale woman Aunt Elisa had seen in her final days? Or was it some kind of survival instinct in my subconscious, warning me of a danger I hadn't consciously registered? I took out my phone and opened the family photo album I had saved. I found the old photo with Carmen, Alberto, and Isabella, the girl with long black hair and pale skin. I stared at her face, trying to imagine her voice. Was that the voice that had saved my life? "Thank you," I whispered into the darkness. "Whoever you are, thank you." No response, of course. But in that moment, I felt a warm sensation spread through my chest as if someone was embracing me, a feeling I hadn't experienced since Aunt Elisa was alive. A few days later, when the gas pipes had been repaired and the house declared safe, I returned. Everything was as I had left it, the wine glass still on the floor, the lights still off, though power had been restored. I walked down the hallway to Aunt Elisa's room. I hadn't been in there since the day she died, unable to face the emptiness. But now I felt I needed to go in. The room was just as she had left it. The bed neatly made family photos on the nightstand. The book she had been reading still open to the last page she had read. I sat down on the bed, stroking the blanket she had laid under. "I miss you," I said into the quiet air. "I hope you're happy wherever you are." I didn't know what I expected, perhaps a sign, a sound, some feeling that she was listening. But the room remained silent. As I was about to leave, I noticed a stack of paper on her dressing table. Curious, I picked it up. It was a letter written in Aunt Elisa's handwriting, dated from a few months ago before her illness had become severe. "My dear Miguel," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I may be gone. I know I'm getting sick. Even before the doctors confirmed it, I could feel my mind slipping away. There are moments when I can't remember your name, and that terrifies me more than anything. But I want you to know that my love for you never wavered even when my memory did. You are my son in every way that matters, and I am proud of the man you are becoming. There is one thing I never told you, a family secret that your mother and I kept for many years. It's about Isabella, our cousin Carmen's daughter. Isabella didn't simply die of anemia. That's what we told people, but the truth is more complicated. Isabella was different from birth. Carmen said she would often talk about people that no one else could see. As she grew older, these visions became worse. She would know when someone was about to die, often days before it happened. It made her isolated, considered strange, even frightening. Then one day when she was 17, she told Carmen she was going to die. Carmen didn't believe her, of course. She looked healthy, if always pale. But a week later, Isabella developed a high fever. The doctors couldn't explain it. She weakened very quickly. Carmen called your mother and me, begging us to come. Your mother didn't want to go. She had always considered Isabella's visions to be superstition and Carmen for nurturing them. But I wanted to go. I had always believed there are more things in this world than we can explain. When we finally arrived too late, Isabella was already gone. Carmen told us Isabella's last words. She had said that she wasn't afraid of dying because now she could do her work without being limited by a physical body. And that work, she said, was to escort her loved ones to the other side when their time came, so they would never have to die alone. I didn't think much of it until recently, when I began to see her Isabella standing in the shadows watching me. This happened even before the doctors diagnosed my illness. At first I thought it was a sign I was losing my mind. But now I'm not so sure. If what I've experienced is real, if Isabella really is waiting for me, then I want you to know that I am not afraid. And I want you to not be afraid either, because it means we're never truly alone, even in our final moment. I hope Isabella will watch over you too, as she has me. Not to take you away, I pray that won't happen for many, many years, but to protect you when I no longer can. Live a full life, my Miguel. Love, laugh, be brave. And remember that I am always with you, even when you cannot see me. With all my love, Aunt Elisa. I sat on the bed, tears streaming down my cheeks, the letter trembling in my hands. Everything started to make sense. Aunt Elisa's hallucinations, her obsession with Isabella, and now the voice that had saved my life. In that moment, I felt a change in the air of the room. The temperature seemed to drop, and I had a distinct feeling that I was no longer alone. Slowly I raised my head and looked toward the corner of the room, the corner that Aunt Elisa used to stare at in her final days. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw a figure. A young woman with long black hair and skin as white as paper, looking at me with ancient eyes and a young face. And standing beside her, leaning on her shoulder, was a more familiar figure, my Aunt Elisa, looking healthier and happier than I had seen her in months. Then the image was gone so quickly I wasn't sure if I had really seen it. But the sense of presence remained warm and comforting. I understand now, I said into the quiet air. I won't be alone, never. No verbal response, but in the still air of the room I could have sworn I heard the whisper of wind, like soft laughter. That night, for the first time since Aunt Elisa died, I slept without nightmares. Instead, I dreamed of a vast field under a blue sky where everyone I had ever loved and lost was waiting for me, not for me to join them, not now, but just to let me know that they were still there, still loving me, still watching over me. And in that dream, a young girl with long black hair and pale skin stood slightly apart, watching me with ancient eyes and a young face. She didn't say anything, but I understood her message. I will watch over you. You will never be alone. When I awoke, sunlight was streaming through the window, filling the room with warm, golden light. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I was still very young with my whole life ahead of me, and there would be many challenges and pains. But now I also knew that I had invisible protectors, those watching over me from beyond the veil, ready to intervene when I needed them most. I looked at the corner of the room where I thought I had seen Isabella and Aunt Elisa. "Thank you," I said simply. "Thank you for not leaving me alone." No response, of course, but as I walked out of the room to start the new day, I couldn't help noticing that the temperature in the room seemed a little warmer, as if someone had just given me a farewell hug. And I knew with absolute certainty that every night when I went to sleep, Isabella would be there watching over me from the shadows. Not to frighten me, not to take me away, but to ensure that I never ever was truly alone. until one day, many years in the future, when the whisper in the night finally came for me. And when that happened, Aunt Elisa, my mother, my father, and perhaps even Isabella herself would be there to ensure I didn't have to face it alone. Just as Aunt Elisa had promised, when it's your time to go, many, many years from now, we will be there to make sure you don't have to go alone. That evening when I went to bed, I left the night light on, not out of fear, but as an invitation. And as I was drifting to sleep, I thought I felt a cold hand gently stroking my hair, a comforting gesture from beyond this world. But in that half-dream state, I wasn't sure if that hand belonged to Aunt Elisa, who had cared for me in this life, or to Isabella, who would care for me when this life ended. Perhaps I thought as I drifted into sleep it didn't much matter. In Spanish tradition, El Guardián de la Familia, the family guardian, is believed to be the spirit of a deceased relative who protects their living family members from harm. Throughout history, there have been countless stories of people saved from certain death by inexplicable warnings or interventions, often attributed to these protective spirits. Have you ever experienced a mysterious rescue or felt the presence of a loved one who has passed? Share your story in the comments below.